think we might be live. Okay, awesome. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us today on this very snowy, wintry day. It's the perfect day to sit back and relax in the comfort of your own home and learn all about voice lessons at the Worcester Music Academy. My name is Sarah Kelly, and I am the director of the school. And for those joining us live on Zoom, thanks for coming. If you're out there on Facebook watching, thanks for joining in. And just a few notes before we get started. I do apologize if I lose power at any point. The town I live in has well, it loses power for no reason at all. So with a snowstorm, anything goes. So if I should lose power, we should hopefully still stay on Zoom. My assistant Marie, if you want to wave to everybody, she will just take over kind of moderating our session today. And while I'm introducing people, we have Ken Richards, one of our voice teachers, if you want to wave to everyone, and Rachel Weishoff as well, joining us. So thanks for taking the time to give your presentation today for everybody. I just wanted to start by giving a brief overview of the Worcester Music Academy. Everything, of course, is on our website, and Marie will be sort of moderating our chat feature today. So if at any point in time you have questions, just feel free to write them directly into the chat feature on Zoom or on Facebook. And if it's something Marie or I can answer, we will do so. Otherwise, we'll save those questions to the end of our presentation and get those answered for you. But Marie will also be posting links to various parts of our website so you can learn more about the different lesson plans that we offer, a link to our registration page, our classes page, so you have all of that information easily available to you. So as I said, the Worcester Music Academy, this is our 10th year in business this year. And, we're doing everything online right now, but hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll be returning to in-person lessons when it is safe to do so. We offer 3 different private lesson plans. You can do our 10-month plan, which is our school year, September through June. We can do a 3-month plan, and then we have a no commitment plan where you can do month-to-month lessons. So you can check out all of the details about those plans on our website, and they have all the information about our rates and all of that fun stuff. We also offer some fun online classes, and we'll post a link to that as well so you can learn more. And today, if you end up joining us for lessons at the end of this presentation, we are doing a special offer. So for the month of December through December 22nd, we are offering a kind of a holiday special where if you register, you get your $50 registration fee waived. And if you register before next Saturday, so a week from today, as a result of being here with us today, you will also get 10% off of your first month of lessons. So we'll repeat that all at the end, but just putting that out there so you know what we're offering everybody. All right, so I think with that, we will hand it over to Ken and Rachel. And I don't know who wants to go first, but take it away.
Well, we're going to do it together. Imagine that, a collaboration.
That's great.
So, Rachel, do you mind if I just start with
I would love if you started.
a short thing? So, in my case, I started studying piano at age 5, and then I added organ at age 9. By age 11, I was an organist, a paid organist in a church. I'm currently studying organ with Mark Mammert, who's a cantor here in Worcester. Rachel?
So, my name is Rachel. I started out singing when I was a kid. I mainly performed in musicals, and as I got older, was a teenager, I started singing with a jazz band and pop music. And then eventually, once I started taking formal voice lessons, I started studying classical repertoire, and that's kind of where my career took me into the operatic and classical realm.
So earlier, Rachel and I were having a conversation. We were talking about how do you explain to a student who may want to study voice what they might get out of it. And so we thought we'd just talk about some of the things that have happened in our lives as a result of being music students and vocalists. When I was in high school, I guess I was in 11th grade, I won a scholarship to Capital University, where really for the first time, I was introduced to people I didn't know because of music. And it opened up a whole world for me. And I know, Rachel, it did for you too.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in New York City, in Staten Island, New York, to be exact. Most people who grow up on Staten Island don't really leave Staten Island. And like Ken was saying, once I got to university, to higher education, I met so many different people because I was studying music. And you meet lots of different people with lots of different ways of thinking. Uh, and it really kind of opens up your worldview to kind of meet these artistic performers.
Speaking of worldviews, when I was in graduate school, I got to do a tour, a recital tour of great organs in Italy. I mean, the people I met there were unbelievable. I learned so much about music because I was there.
Yeah, and I think that a profession in music, it takes you all over, right? So not just in your studying, right, in your college or your university or your school or whatever performing groups you're in. My profession has taken me all around the country, working and singing for opera companies. It's taken me abroad into Europe to perform and to study. And all of these things that I've done, I probably would have never done them if I didn't pursue music, study music. I would be a completely different person than I am today.
But one of the things that just came to mind as a result of what you said, Rachel, was that not everybody wants to have a career in music, but they want music to be a part of their lives. And that's my case. I didn't want a career in music, though I'd been a musician all my life. I wanted a career first in advertising, and then I became a part of the corporate world and rose to the CEO level. And then I was the president of 3 colleges. And now in my young retirement years, I have the joy of imparting to young people and up to people my age, 35, what I've learned in my life about music. And that is such a joy.
Yeah. And Ken and I were discussing before this actually what some of those benefits are, for both ourselves and what we've seen in our students. I've seen very shy, reserved, maybe lacking in confidence students, and through studying music and all of the challenges and introspection that singing brings, you really see people blossom and develop a lot of life skills. Do you want to elaborate on that, Ken?
You know, here's some of the things that happened to me um, that music made possible. I grew up, unlike Rachel, you know, the very cosmopolitan Rachel who grew up right out of New York, right outside of New York City.
Lucky.
I lived there for 25 years, so I speak from experience.
Yeah.
I grew up in Steubenville, Ohio, a football town. I was a little musician. And only, you know, the quarterbacks and the people on the football team were popular. And yet I was the king of our senior prom. And in college, my sophomore year, I was the J prom king, which is homecoming king. all because, and that was based upon a musical competition, all because I was a musician. Because music has been a passion in my life, I was accepted into Juilliard to study voice. I studied with Orrin Brown, who's a famous, it turns out, opera teacher, or was, but he and I worked on Broadway. Marge Rivingston, a very famous Broadway teacher, and David Friedman, studied with him. He is a conductor for Disney. And Skip Kennan, who's like a jazz wizard in New York. I played in jazz clubs in Manhattan. I started my own off-Broadway show. And I was the Dean of Performing Arts at the Ross School and Institute in East Hampton, New York. So these were things that I hadn't planned on. They were gifts because I loved what I did and do.
Yeah, likewise. When I was a kid, I loved music, but I also was pretty nerdy. And I always had a dream of going to an Ivy League school. And then when I realized I was going to go into music, I thought, well, that's not going to happen because I'm going into music. And then I ended up studying music at Yale, where the tuition is covered. And it was amazing to meet people from all over coming together, kind of taking advantage of what music can give you in your future. Yeah. Should we talk about a little bit about what lessons are like for students?
Sure. You want to start?
Yeah. So singing lessons are usually broken down into 3 parts. Can also we have like the structure that most singing teachers follow, which is you spend the first portion of your lesson, usually, you work on technique, you warm up. For every student, things are different, right? Because every voice is different. So your teacher will find very specific things that work for your voice and your needs. And then you do some musicianship work. You work on learning, improving your pitch, improving your sight reading, improving your rhythm. And then there's repertoire work, which is song study, where you work on songs and interpretation and the text, how emotionally you connect with the song, which is where you do a lot of your growing as an artist. And Ken, do you want to elaborate on lessons and song
Sure.
interpretation?
Well, I think you've covered the musical part, and I was especially happy to hear you mention students' needs.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a really good music teacher has to be skilled in identifying students' needs. And they're all different. And some of them are rather subtle, but it's critical. And the other thing I think would be good to add to this, Rachel, might be, and you and I have talked about this and agree on it wholeheartedly, the lifelong lessons that come from studying music. Mm-hmm. I was the Dean of Performing Arts for 10 years at a private K through 12 school. And I was conducting research there with Howard Gardner from Harvard. And our research and other research that I had done indicates that students who study music generally do better academically, and they almost to a student do better in mathematics and science. Because I tell students, music is math. It is math. And I'm not mathematically inclined, but I'm a good musician anyway, so you don't have to be, but my math has been enhanced by it. And so I think that's critical. But also, I was giving a lesson last night, and Rachel and I talked about this earlier today, and I was talking about emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. And I had a father who was sitting there, it was his second lesson that he'd ever been to. And after the lesson, he said, "I can't believe that you were talking about emotional intelligence in a voice lesson." And I said, well, that's part of studying music. It's lifelong lessons. If you can develop emotional intelligence in singing, imagine what you can do in speaking.
Yeah, and I've found that amongst musicians and performers, um, you find some of the most empathetic people that you'd ever meet. And I think that it takes a level of empathy to study music, understand music, and especially in singing, where you are often taking on a character, someone other than yourself, and you maybe have never gone through what this character has gone through, but you have to exercise your empathy and try to think, what would I do if this was me? Or have I experienced something maybe different but similar? So it does grow your empathy quite a bit as well, and your sensitivity.
And I think too, your self-esteem.
Yeah.
When you've accomplished something that's difficult, like singing in front of people for the first time, walking away from that, even if the performance wasn't what you wanted it to be, there is still self-esteem that comes from that. And over time in music, I've seen students just blossom. And a lot of that has to do with their perception of themselves. I mean, one of the first things we teach in voice lessons is that you are not your voice. I mean, a flute player, I don't think I've ever met a flute player, but a flute player, a flute player, and now I forget what I was going to say. Uh,
About maybe your instrument, how the
oh,
voice.
right. A flute player can take their flute apart and put it in the case. You can't do that with your voice. And many students have difficulty separating themselves from their voice. They think they are their voice. They aren't. And that affects self-esteem also. It brings in the whole concept of objectivity as a young person much earlier than it would normally.
Yeah, and I think it also requires a lot of self acceptance as well, because you can improve your singing, you can improve your musicality, you could become the best singer you can become, but your voice will always be your voice. And for example, I have a very low singing voice, and growing up, it was I didn't like it. I wanted to have the high pop singing voice that I always heard on the radio.
And I
Um,
always wanted to be a tenor.
yeah, well, I think I maybe am a tenor of life, but I think discovering different repertoire and taking lessons, I really learned to appreciate the beauty of my own voice, and I think that's something Ken and I both agree with, is that it's very important, especially for younger students, to know that your voice is perfect just as it is. You don't have to sound like any pop singer. You don't have to sound like someone who is 20 years older than you. Um, and singing with your voice is always going to be the most beautiful voice that you can offer yourself and the world. Um, and the same thing goes for adults. Uh, you can't, like Ken said, right? You can't buy the more expensive violin. You can't buy the more expensive flute. And this also is important, I think, also, Ken, that um, because you can't do that, you have to take special care of your instrument, and you have to be more in touch with your emotions, because your emotions will affect your instrument. You have to learn how to keep yourself healthy, how to all these wellness things. I think that I learned from being a singer, I would have never learned these self-acceptance things, how to be kind to yourself, how to take care of yourself. So that's another big benefit of
Yeah,
singing.
absolutely. Did we lose Amanda?
I think so, but that's okay. Keep going because
Okay.
maybe she's on Facebook.
I was just going to say, we talked about some of the songs our students sing. I'll start off by saying that I have a 10-year-old singing Adele's Hello, which is incredible, just incredible. And I said to her mother, are you sure you feel okay about this? Because that's one of the things we do especially if a student wants to sing something that's a little bit more adult. She said, oh yeah, it'd be wonderful. And so I have a 10-year-old singing Hello. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think the key is that, you know, a lot of the time you can recommend repertoire to your students, you can recommend songs. I think there should be a balance, right? Of maybe we assign a song, you bring in a song you like.
Mhm.
But I think it's really good for your voice teacher to anything you want to work on, for them to show you the most healthy way to sing it. Because whether you're in the lesson or out of the lesson, once you leave the lesson, you're probably going to end up singing your favorite songs anyway. So why not have your teacher kind of nurture you and see you through singing these songs that, you know, maybe, like Ken said, you know, it's an Adele song, you're 10 years old. But if you're going to be singing it, you should bring it into your teacher. And then they can show you the healthy way to sing it so that you'll be singing for years and years and years without vocal issues. Like a lot
I don't,
of singers
I
end
don't
up.
want to get too deep about this, but there's a psychological aspect of all of this as well. So if I've got a 10-year-old singing Hello, Hello is about losing someone you care for. Well, what a student learns at 10 is that, well, geez, everybody goes through that. It's not just me.
Yeah. And I think that, and I think Ken and I had talked about this before, and I think Ken would agree that a lot of the time we underestimate, especially young singers, um, or just people in general, what people have experienced and what they've been through. And I think that getting to take on another character, getting to learn an art song based on poetry, and getting to express what you've gone through, and maybe you are embarrassed to express it, you know, what you've literally gone through. But it's a really good way to process um, emotions and experiences through song and through the characters that you get to portray. And like Ken said, young kids, you know, they have different things in life that maybe give them issues, but it doesn't minimize that they're, you know, that they're giving them issues. Or, you know, maybe it's someone at school who's not being nice to you, or maybe a teacher that doesn't listen to you. um, there's usually always a parallel in these songs for any age, um, to learn how to navigate through these situations and also process them for themselves.
And it also starts with, before you do any of that, beginning, and this is a lifelong process, but beginning to understand who you are,
Mm-hmm.
because that also helps you choose songs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really important, that's a really important point, that I think that yeah, it helps you learn how to choose songs, and it also helps you maybe look at songs that you would have never thought to look at before. When I started lessons, I was singing musical theater, jazz, and I started classical lessons, and I sang a Strauss song Zueignung, and I thought, oh my goodness, um, this is amazing. Like, I felt like somewhere so deep inside of me there was this connection to this music, and through voice lessons I was able to access it and find this new outlet that I would have never heard of Strauss if it wasn't for my voice teacher.
And
uh,
Rachel, I think you brought it up in our conversation earlier about how performance um, helps anyone learn how to deal with nerves.
yeah.
And that's a lifelong learning as well, because public speaking, I mean, if I were to ask you what is the number one fear among Americans today, it's not death, it's public speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially as we go through this age, oh, which is important. We should also after this talk about what Zoom lessons are like,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
about
We only
technology
have a couple minutes left.
in an age of technology where we do so many phone calls, texting, emails. Uh, Often when we do have to speak to people face to face, we all get a little extra nervous, I think. And performing and singing in front of people, what's scarier than that, and what's more vulnerable than that? So it makes everything in life a little easier. So talking about technology, Ken and I were talking about how Zoom lessons have actually almost increased our efficiency as teachers. When this whole thing started, I thought, oh, I never teach virtually. I'm not going to teach virtually. But, music has to go on, right? Why should we miss out on a musical experience just because of what's going on in the world? Um, and I found that as a teacher, we really have had to learn how to come at things from different angles and really listen and get super creative. And I think students' musicality actually benefits because we're not with you to feed you all the pitches like singers love to get. Yes, we'll help you, of course. We're not cruel. But you really have to become a better musician this way, I believe.
Yeah, and it changes focus a little bit. When I'm on Zoom with a student, I am glued to the screen. But if I'm in a studio with a student, I'm playing piano, so it divides my attention. So it actually is more efficient in that way. Um, we have two bonus questions, number 5 and number 6. You want to go, Rachel?
Let me check. Oh, wait. Okay. Number 5 was, do you have to know how to read music?
I have the answer.
What is it?
No, but it helps.
Yes. So,
So you end up learning it, but not directly.
right. I had a very unique start to learning how to read music. I learned like everything by ear until I got to college where I majored in music. So I had to really quickly catch up. And it is possible. And it's really valuable. So no, you don't have to come in knowing how to read music, but Ken and I both we'll get you there for sure. And I have another question for
Oh,
you.
no, I'm going to ask this question. You can answer it. Do you have to
You get
sing
the
in
answer last
public?
time. Okay.
I said, the question is, do you have to sing in public?
Yes, but it's negotiable. But yeah, it's definitely encouraged because all of these benefits that we've talked about, you really reap all those benefits if you're performing. And you more intimately will learn your music. There's a difference between learning your music for a lesson and learning your music for a performance. And getting really in depth with your music, it's a really different, more intimate experience. And it's really fun when you perform and it's everyone's clapping and everyone's happy and you get the adrenaline rush. So it's really fun. We encourage it.
And you learn how to connect with people
Yeah.
in a way you never have before.
Yeah. With your audience and you're feeding off of them. Even our Zoom, we had a Zoom recital and we were all there kind of you know, ooh la laing over all the students, and it's been really nice that we've been able to continue the musical journey, even if we can't all be together. And I think it's really important.
I think some thanks ought to be shared with Sarah about, the almost seamless transition that we made from working in the studio to going online. That's not easy to do, and she made it possible. So thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Well, thanks to Marie because she also helped with
And Marie.
that. Yeah.
Well, Marie's the power.
Yeah, in general, I have to also comment on that a bit, is that the team in general at Worcester Music Academy, Ken and I have both taught many different schools, many different places. The amount of support we receive from Sarah and Marie and the sidelines, like making sure everything's okay. It's really incredible, and I know that our students, every student at Worcester Music Academy, also receives the same support whenever it's needed. Um, yeah, and Sarah's just like really one of the best people you ever want to deal with ever. So
And what I've seen at uh, Worcester Music Academy in the, what, 3 years I've been there?
Probably, yeah.
Um, I was 28 at the time. Uh, uh, is that music lessons there aren't negative. I look for the positive aspect of teaching so that a student enjoys learning,
mm-hmm.
as opposed to considering it an ordeal they have to go through.
Yes, I think Ken and I both talked about this as well, that as performers, right, we've dealt with a lot of teachers ourselves. We've had a lot of teachers, and usually when you get to a professional level, or maybe even not, maybe even earlier on, which is even sadder, I think, you deal with a lot of teachers who have a lot of ego. And the lesson becomes more about the teacher than the student. And it's important for both of us that our students are the focus of the lesson. I always tell my students, you're not here to impress me. You're not here to worry. You're not here to judge yourself. We're here to explore your voice. And the only person who's supposed to worry is me, right? You're not there to give yourself a voice lesson. You're there for us to give you a voice lesson, and we're supposed to do the worrying. You're supposed to just be exploring and enjoying making music.
I have I guess she's 12 years old now, student who, for the first year, cried in at least half of her lessons. And she would cry when she made a mistake. And now she doesn't do that anymore. She realizes that mistakes are part of the process. They're how we learn. And that's a lifelong lesson.
Mistakes are like the best thing that can happen in a lesson. I always tell students, like, don't try not to crack, right? Because if you don't crack, if you don't mess up, that means you're not really making yourself vulnerable. You're not really taking that next leap to try something different with your voice, to unleash the full potential of your voice. Um,
Or
so,
you're using bad technique to cover the break.
yeah, what's that?
I said, or you're using bad technique to cover
Yes,
the break.
exactly. Exactly. So you need to let go of those bad habits. And if that means making a strange sound or cracking or making a mistake, guess what? Ken and I have been there a million times over in our own lessons, getting to where we are now, where we've done the same things. And I have to say, I've learned the most about my voice when I've been able to be kind to myself and not judge and just go with the process and know that it is a process.
So I think that's the end.
Awesome. Well, that was extremely informative. I think just to kind of play off of some of the things that you guys said, talking about repertoire choices for your students, and letting them pick and maybe having a balance of you picking something as well. But we also probably should touch a little bit on like ages for singing. I know there's a lot of controversy around how old should you be for voice lessons. And I think a lot of, vocal professionals would say you wait until you're, 12, 13 and you're going through your changes and your voice is kind of
Yeah.
happened, but then we get lots of calls for students who are 5, 6, 7 years old who want to be the next Taylor Swift and, whoever the current famous pop singer is. And so, at least our approach at the school is to get them studying, but encouraging them to do it in the right way. And I'd be curious for you guys to address like how does a lesson for like a younger student, 5 to 10 years old, differ from like a teen or an adult student?
Rachel, you want to start with that?
Sure. It's kind of similar to what we touched on before that. Um, wait, I totally lost my train of thought.
Oh, adolescence.
So yeah, for the young students that they're going to, so say like I don't know, 10 and younger or something like that, or even 15 and younger. I didn't start lessons until my grandma was a singer, and she did not. She told my parents she could not take lessons until she's 16. So I had to wait. Um, for a younger student, they're going to do it anyway. They're going to be singing anyway. They're going to be singing to the radio just like I did. I was singing anyway. And I actually developed before I knew what I was doing. I remember being in high school and I had so much jaw tension. And I think if I would have had a teacher to supervise the singing, right? So maybe a young singer, maybe I'll definitely encourage my younger students to sing more in their head voice, and I think building that strong head voice is what will eventually give you a nice healthy belt and a nice clean transitions to your throughout your registers.
I think you might want to define belt.
Define belt.
Yeah, it's not a common term outside of the industry.
So belting is what you hear most, I'd say. Well, actually, pop singers now are kind of singing in head voice more often. Um, but so belt is when you bring kind of your speaking voice, your chest register up really high. And you hear most pop singers doing that today, as opposed to a head voice that you'd hear in more classical music, legit musical theater. And it's very unfamiliar for a lot of young singers because we don't hear it on the radio. A
Well,
bit more now than maybe 5 years ago. Um, but it's very important, especially for a young child. I get a lot of students who are young and they can't access their head voice at all. Uh, and for a young student, that shouldn't really be the case. So it's important to kind of develop that, I think, first, make sure everything's functioning well. And then, as they get older, if they're singing songs that require belting, I think they'll be more equipped to handle the belting in a really healthy way. And also to develop more of like a mix, which is kind of something in between the two. So yeah, I think like Ken was saying with his student who wanted to sing "Hello," the Adele song. Um, yeah, it's important, I think, to explain to kids that a lot of pop singers do end up hurting their voice, like Adele actually ended up really hurting her voice. Um, so it's our job to kind of show you, okay, you can sing this song, but there's a way to do it without tension. And I think if young kids are going to do it outside of lessons, why not have someone supervise? And like Sarah said, I always kind of make a bargain with my students that, okay, I'll pick a song and you pick a song. And we'll do either both in the lesson or maybe one lesson the next lesson. And oftentimes the song that your teacher picks for you will help in your singing of the music that you want to sing.
um, I was going to say that uh, I would guess that at least half of people who think that they can sing but have not been trained are harming their voices.
Yeah.
And the way they do that is by vocal cords are actually muscles. And so they use them as opposed to using them as a vibrating, free flowing thing, they use the muscle part and they tear them apart to get a high note. Well, if you do that often enough, what's going to happen is you're going to develop nodes on your vocal cords, which requires surgery.
Or
So
vocal rest for a really long time, so that means you can't sing for
yeah,
a long time, like
so
six
that's
months.
part of the whole. You were talking earlier about holistic health.
Yeah.
associated with music, and that's part of it. Learning how to sing or produce sound from a healthy standpoint.
Yeah. I also want to throw in, I feel like this isn't something that's often talked about, and I just thought of it. Um, I found that, and this might be of interest for parents actually, for their kids who want to study voice. I so that taking care of yourself starts if you're serious about singing, if you love singing. That taking care of yourself happens, high school, college. For example, all of the singers, the classical, the opera majors, we weren't out partying and things. We had to take care of our voice. Alcohol, smoking, those things, you have to be a lot more careful, a lot more, So I think you develop a habit of, oh, I have this thing I love so much. And I love it so much that I don't want to risk damaging this delicate tissue inside my throat. I don't want to be tired for my rehearsal the next day. I want to sound great for my performance. Um, so I think that's something that, you look back at your life and you wonder, your life could take so many different roads. And I know that that kind of discipline and self care came from being a singer, for sure.
Um, in just listening to all that you've said, one of the things that strikes me is, and we've hinted at this earlier, um, most people would be shocked to learn all that's involved in singing.
Mm. Yeah.
All the learning that's involved, and a lot of it is associated with knowledge that benefits you in many different areas in your life, not just musically.
Yeah. Yeah. You become very well rounded being a singer. And also, like for example, in musical theater as well, but in my studying opera roles and different songs in different languages, you learn French, you learn Italian, you learn German, you learn all these languages. Depending what musical you are singing from, depending on what opera you're singing from, or what composer you're learning, you need to learn about the time period as well. You can't be singing a song about, I don't know, the French Revolution and not know what it's about,
Well,
right? You can't be singing a song from Les Mis and not know what's going on. You can't. So you learn a lot about the human condition and also a lot about history as well.
and I mean, for example, in music, most musical terminology is in Italian,
Yeah,
unless you're playing Bach.
right. Yeah, so you get to learn even if you're singing a song in English, you'll see words in Italian. Um, yeah,
Forte,
sometimes
piano.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, singing's great.
I think another important thing to just touch on is what happens in between lessons is also extremely important. So, as a student, you could be very excited about taking voice lessons and not really realize that there's work on your part that happens in between lessons. And it's not if you're an adult student or a high school or college student, you probably are a little bit more able to motivate yourself to practice in between your lessons. You understand more that it's important as part of the musical journey. But especially for the younger kids, teenagers or elementary age students, they might not realize that, okay, I actually do need to practice in between my lessons. And, the younger the student, the more commitment is involved with the family as well. you know I know as the director, I get a lot of parents who do say, my child just won't practice, but I don't know what to do, and it's not something that I want to get involved with. I want them to learn how to do this on their own. And I think it's part understanding that you do have to be involved as a parent or guardian or to encourage and communicate with your child's teacher, um, to know, well, what are they working on? What should they be doing when they're at home practicing doing lessons? What shouldn't they doing? Or, if there's something that could be damaging their voice. So having communication is really important, so that you can be your child's cheerleader at home and encouraging them to be doing things the right way. And, just kind of reminding them that, this is a journey, and, from week to week, you might not see the differences that your teachers see. It might be really subtle at first, but, over the long period of time, you are going to start seeing the improvements that your teachers are noticing, and you'll feel more comfortable performing in those recitals. So I think that's a really important thing to just remember.
I think as a teacher, 2 minutes into a lesson, you know how much they've practiced. But the trick is not to yell at them because you've discovered they haven't practiced. You gently ask, so how much time did you have to work on this week? It's not like, how much time did you spend on this? It's, so how much time did you get to spend on this? So it's gentle, but it imparts the idea that, oh, maybe he keeps talking about me practicing. Maybe I should do some of that.
Yeah.
But not hitting him over the head with it.
Right. I agree. I definitely don't, because, life happens. I think especially for like teenage students who are balancing school and adults who are balancing work, and even kids whose parents are busy. I think, yeah, it's definitely not something to be punished, right?
And we're dealing with households now that are in chaos.
Yes. If you discover they haven't practiced, it's not something that deserves to be reprimanded. But I think, yeah, it's important for us teachers to be in touch with parents so that they know the expectations, and also to find a way, like Ken said, either you drop, little hints, or you find a way to kind of encourage them, make them more interested in practicing, especially if you see something that improves. You really want to monopolize that on that and say, you see, like, this sounds great, you must have practiced this. And then they're going to want to practice more. And I think subtle is I'm really happy that Sarah brought that up, because I think, especially in instruments where you have to create your own tone. So like a piano, you hit the piano keys, the tone is there. A guitar, not as much as the piano, but you strum the strings and the tone is there. For flute, you have to create the tone. For voice, you have to create the tone and the timbre of the tone, and the pitch of the tone. And I think that the little subtle achievements are sometimes the biggest. I'll be teaching a student and they'll do something and I'll freak out and I'll be like clapping and yelling, and they'll just be sitting there like, why? Why are you excited? But the little subtle things, especially in singing, I think are really important and to be celebrated. And again, to look back, have 10 lessons, look back to your first lesson and think, wow, could I have done this? Or was I getting tired doing this? Or did my jaw always hurt? Was I always tense and now I'm not? I think those are things that, it takes practice, right? And I think something I actually was talking about with one of my students today is that you can't really cram practicing for you can't cram your work for an instrument or singing.
I've tried.
Yes, me too. So something you discover, especially like when you study it in school and things, in school I would have friends that weren't musicians, and they would say like, oh, I have this test to study for, like, I'm just gonna like pull an all-nighter. Okay, so if you have a recital, first of all, you cannot stay up all night and then perform a recital. Your body will be exhausted. Second of all, you can't memorize all of that music. You can't get it into your voice. It's kind of like, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to lift 50 pounds and I'm going to just lift 50 pounds all night, and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to lift 50 pounds. It just doesn't work that way. So I think in encouraging when students start seeing that subtle improvement and the teacher really celebrates it, it does it helps students to want to practice, I think. And like Ken said, we'll never berate someone who didn't get around to practicing.
And I now have, I don't know how many, I probably more than half of my students now will tell me how much they practiced this past week before it even comes up, out of honesty.
Yes. That's important too, right? I think that it's better for us to know if something hasn't been practiced or if something has been practiced, because the voice is very different than another instrument. If you haven't really learned your music and you're kind of sight reading through it, it might not be the best for your voice. You might not be thinking about technique. And it's important information for us to know that, oh, I didn't really get around to learning this. Okay, well, let's look at it together. Let's not take it to the next step. And I think something that students, and Ken, I think you'll agree, students start to realize that if they're not practicing, we often stay in the same place because you can't really move on with a song and get into the really interesting character development and all those things if you haven't practiced the notes and the rhythms. And if you're struggling with that, it's hard to move to the next level, I think.
Yeah. And for parents that may be watching, I have the ultimate benefit for studying voice. A decent used piano is going to cost you about $3,000.
Yes.
Voice comes with the student.
That is true. There's no investment in your instruments.
Yeah, it's been real. I mean, meeting friends in conservatory, when you're studying in conservatory and you meet friends who are like, oh, I really need a new whatever, and you're like, oh, how much does that cost? And they tell you, and you're like, oh, sorry, I asked.
$22,000 violin.
Yeah, it's like, but on the other side of it, you can't buy another one of these, right?
That's right.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is super informative. I don't know if there's any questions, Marie, that have come through on Facebook that you want to share, or Flora, if you had any. So just thank you guys for coming, and thank you for the presentation. Just a reminder, if you sign up for voice lessons between now and next Saturday, we will offer you 10% off your first month of lesson in addition to the waived registration fee of $50. So now is the time to sign up. We also do offer a free trial lesson, a 30-minute free trial lesson if you do want to try out a lesson before you make a commitment. So just reach out. Best way to reach me is by email, sarah@worcestermusicacademy.com. And Marie and I will put that in the link so you know how to reach me. And we do have some other upcoming Q&A sessions in the future. January 9th, it's a Saturday at 1 p.m. We are going to be doing one all about guitar lessons. And on Saturday, January 16th at 11 a.m., we're going to be doing a general Q&A session for the Worcester Music Academy. So any instrument that you're interested in, I'm happy to answer questions about. And there may be some more coming down the road. We also had a piano one this past week that you can find on Facebook if you want to learn more about piano lessons as well. So thank you again. I hope you enjoy your snowy weekend, and we will hopefully hear from you soon.
I'm going to sing my way through it.
Awesome. Very good.